It is Thursday, September 7th, 2023 at Protestia Studios, and this is your intelligence briefing. Hope you are having a good day. Thank you for tuning in. You can go to protestia.com to read all the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. We're going to get right into the headlines. First headline at protestia.com, non-binary Lutheran reveals pride is wearing a crop top at the lectern and showing a little skin. Okay, I'm assuming this is the ELCA, but let's find out. Christ Lutheran Church in Blaine, Minnesota, led by Pastor Sarah E. Moat. And wait, Sarah E. Moat? This is a made-up name, right? That can't possibly be her actual name. Sarah Emote, because I like to emote. Anyway, has the distinction of being one of the more progressive churches, in scare quotes, we've ever come across. A quintessential evangelical Lutheran Church in America congregation. There you go. Pastrix Moat is not content to refer to LGBTQ peeps with the moniker, but insists on doing the whole LGBTQIA2S plus LMNOP XYZ each time. So it really does, I guess, have a bunch of meanings for all of that, and you can see that in the article here. She explains that they've formed a welcoming team in 2020 with a focus on ensuring that these people have a safe space within the church. One of the first things the team did was to encourage the staff and congregation to begin identifying themselves with personal pronouns. So it's like, I'm so-and-so, he, she. I'm so-and-so. I guess you can't be he, she, or maybe you can. I don't know. He, him, she, her, after you say your name. But this clip is from a 2023 Pride service. And our intrepid staff writer said, I don't have words for this one, and you have never seen anything like it before. I'm usually not too surprised by this stuff, but let's find out.
Pride is also me coming up to the lectern, wearing a crop top, showing a little skin at the church. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
As we are celebrating Pride Sunday, we are especially lifting up and celebrating those who identify as LGBTQIA2S+. And we honor them especially today, but hopefully as a church we continue to honor and welcome them throughout the entire year.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Rosine, and I use they, them pronouns. I'm queer, I'm trans, and I'm a non-binary individual. And Sarah is with me as well because, like Sarah said, it's an emotional time to be up here. So
is it a towel on this person's head? I'm assuming this is a biological male.
I wonder what I'm
Anybody?
Talk about at the lectern today. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And so we left our house around 8:40, and we needed to be here at 9. So that's why the towel is on my head today, because my hair has to be dry somehow. I mean, and I just thought it was a really cool way to show up authentically to church today. I told them
okay. Well, you can go see the rest of that at protestia.com or go over to Protestia's Twitter to see the rest of the video. But let's just say the insanity continues in these supposed, quote-unquote churches. Next headline from the Dissenter. Memphis Church in 2023 instructs members to quarantine and mask up for COVID. It's like, apparently they've forgotten what year it is. 4 years ago, the COVID panic hit the world. The vast majority of sane people in this world have finally come to see it for what it is, a scare tactic designed to force the masses into submission. Yet there are some out there who just don't seem to learn despite the obvious nature of it. One such church is Greater Harvest in Memphis, Tennessee. Recently, this church released a COVID update video instructing its members to quarantine and mask up, despite the enormous amount of proof that such tactics were completely useless against this mild, mostly harmless cold they called COVID. Let's go down here to I guess this is the video, and see what they have to say.
I'm one of the nurses on board here with our medical staff at Greater Harvest. Our pastor, Pastor Renata Ward, and our Good Shepherd is allowing for this Health Matter segment in regards to the COVID-19, the new variant that's out. He is concerned about our safety inside the church and outside the church. The medical staff here stays informed on all information that's coming through the CDC.
Do they though?
We have a nurse that sits on the committee for CDCs and get daily updates on the COVID-19 virus. So far, the CDC has not mandated wearing masks. The new variant is a batch from the Omicron.
Just to be clear, the CDC doesn't get to do that. They never got to do that. The CDC doesn't get to mandate anybody do anything, just for the record.
And the symptoms are usually a headache, feeling tired, sleeping long periods of time. You may not have a fever, chills, or nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea.
So if you're tired, or you might want to sleep a little bit longer, you feel a little bit fatigued, it's probably COVID. And you should probably mask up or quarantine, or like, it's like, these folks will never learn, I guess. Who knows? According to the person, apparently there is a mass epidemic of tests showing false negatives for COVID. And who are the ones who are the highest risk? According to this person, anyone who has 2 or more comorbidities. Comorbidities. She said comorbidities.
Those are still symptoms of COVID-19 and can also be represented by the flu as well. We also see that there has been an outbreak with RSV. It's usually with children, but there have been diagnoses with...
Did they put this music in the background? Like for this?
Vaccine as prescribed by your healthcare provider. If you happen to test positive and not showing any symptoms, still stay quarantined for 5 days and then wear your mask up to 10 days. We are asking that if you're a healthcare giver or if...
Oh, this goes on for a while. We don't have time for that. Yeah, but we go over to the dissenter to read the rest of that, and watch the rest of that video if you want to hear about the mobilities that might be an issue here. Next headline at Protestia: investigation substantiates abuses by disgraced pastor Mike Pilavachi. I'm going to pronounce it that way. Pilavachi is probably how he pronounces it, but I like Pilavachi. The Church of England has completed its safeguarding investigation into abuse allegations against prominent UK pastor and evangelist Mike Pilavachi, finding him guilty of a range of inappropriate behavior spanning 40 years. Pilavachi was the founder of the Soul Survivor Festival, a summer camp mass outreach event of worship, evangelism, and charismatic focus that drew over 32,500 UK youth in 2019 before being shuttered. And now, apparently, upon investigation, the Church of England has concluded that this guy was doing inappropriate things with boys, mostly, and apparently is a big scumbag. Matt Redman, the worship leader, 10,000 Reasons and all that, was one of the first to report his victimhood at the hands of this man. He's spoken out against him. A press release from the Church of England reads in part that the investigation team has concluded that the accusations are substantiated, an abuse of power relating to his ministry, spiritual abuse described in guidance as a form of emotional and psychological abuse characterized by a systematic pattern of coercive and controlling behavior in a religious context. Read more about this at protestia.com, but safe to say the conclusion of the investigation is that Mike Pilavachi is guilty of or at least the accusations against him are substantiated. And just a horrible thing anytime you see somebody in a position of ministerial trust turning out to do these kind of things. Next headline at Protestia: investigation concludes $700,000 stolen from Florida Baptist Convention was not an inside job. This at Protestia, written by Magdalene Henna, I believe that's how she pronounces it. Correct me if I've gotten that pronunciation wrong. I apologize, but the article reads: 4 months ago, the Florida Baptist Convention informed members that they were the victim of a highly sophisticated cybercrime that used fraudulent emails to steal $700,000 earmarked for Send Network Florida. An investigatory report concluded there was no criminal activity on the part of any Florida Baptist Convention staff person to account for the losses, but instead the crime was the result of sophisticated cyber targeting by, at this point, unknown perpetrators. So it's a small consolation for the convention, which has been reeling from the loss. The report was delivered during their August 24-25 meeting in Jacksonville. So apparently it was not somebody inside the Florida Baptist Convention that did this, according to the report, but some sort of cyber criminal activity. I tend to find a lot of the time when there's cyber criminal activity, there is somebody in the organization involved, but it's usually they've been scammed. They've been the target of phishing or some sort of social engineering or that kind of a thing. But I guess we'll find out when we find out if that might be the cause of the $700,000 stolen from the Florida Baptist Convention. Next headline at Protestia, Acts 29. Oh, this was crazy. I saw this morning. Acts 29 network talking heads pummeled for squishy LGBTQ response. So this is Justin Anderson, who's director of church planting for Acts 29, interviewing Mike Sullivan, who is the lead pastor of Emmaus Church in Worcester, Massachusetts, sharing strategies for churches to show gospel hospitality. Here we go. Gospel hospitality to our alphabet friends and family with conviction and love. Let's listen in a little bit.
Hi, my name is Justin Anderson. I am the director of church planting for Acts 29, and I'm here with Mike Sullivan, who is the lead pastor at Emmaus City Church in Worcester, Massachusetts. Nailed it. And we just got done. He did a main session. We're at the Northeast Regional for Acts 29. Just did a main session about how we can do ministry among LGBTQ people. And I don't even want to say any more because I was just telling you.
First of all, that's not a thing. I just want to make sure that folks know that the biblical position and the official Protestia position is there's no such thing as a LGBTQ person ontologically. So we see the first error already in saying, hey, there's an immutable part of somebody's nature or the way they're created that must have these practices and must have these desires. That's just not biblically true.
The title of your message was so great and really became the framework for your talk. So maybe give us the actual title and then maybe unpack a little bit of some of those ideas.
Yeah, so the actual title was Walking with Jesus Among Our Beloved LGBTQI Family and Friends and Neighbors. And the reason why I wanted to title it that way is not only to honor those that we get to love, that would be in our friends, family, and neighbors, but also to pause for a second and pray and ask, where is Jesus at work in this community? Because I think we can make a lot of assumptions that have really hurt us. And it also helps us come in as listeners and learners.
Now, first of all, let me start by saying Acts 29 is a church planting network that centered around Calvinist soteriology, and Calvinists like myself are known for our fidelity to Scripture. So we're already in a troublesome place here.
With a posture of compassion. So kind of the frame of discussing this was really not only who do we get to pray for that would consider us friends and family and neighbors, but also in the midst of that, do we know their stories? Have we paused long enough to hear not only where there's pain that Jesus is meeting with compassion, or that he may be inviting us to express that compassion, but also to do it with a sense of hospitality, of welcoming them.
So that's what you're hearing there is standpoint theory, standpoint epistemology, the idea that right and wrong or how we should act towards one another is based off of somebody's category, somebody's demographic. The assumption being that, well, there must be hurt among these LGBTQ identifying folks, and we have to treat them differently, or basically soft pedal this or make excuses for how they've characterized themselves or categorized themselves in order to reach them. That's what you're seeing here. Basically, justice and righteousness and God's law is changed or different to these folks based off of the identity of the person that they're dealing with.
into our lives as much as we get to be welcomed into their lives, and to do it with a humility as well as a hope that only God can provide.
Yeah. So I love that phrase of walking with Jesus among our beloved LGBTQ friends, family, and neighbors. So that you were just saying there's often a sense of like either we're going to separate ourselves or we're going to take Jesus to them. Yeah. How is it different at a practical level to consider walking with Jesus among them?
Yeah, I think a key thing is there's so many beautiful ways in which God already knows their story, but we don't. And so
in terms of God's law, their story doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that we ever approach anybody saying, hey, what your concerns are or what you're saying to me or this and that doesn't matter. But in terms of what we're called to do as believers, somebody's story, and it's always their story adjudicated by their emotions and feelings and things like that. God is not primarily concerned with that. He's primarily concerned about saving their souls, preaching the gospel unapologetically. It's not about their story. How we are to approach evangelism this way doesn't change based off of what somebody says their story is or their expressed feelings. It just doesn't. That may sound harsh, but it's also the truth.
Some of them are going to have a lot of hurt in terms of the ways that, sadly, they've been confronted or marginalized.
Now, confronting somebody about their sin, especially about sin that the Bible describes as sin that's leading you to hell, the unrepentance that indicates non-regeneration, not being saved, confronting somebody over that is loving. It must be done. If you truly love these people, you will confront it. So when somebody comes along and says, well, they feel like they were hurt and they really have a lot of pain with this, and that changes the way that you minister or evangelize, that's anti-gospel. That's not love for these people, that's hate for them.
Ostracized, and so being among them means, do they see where we mourn with those who mourn? And in a way, are we trusting that the Holy Spirit will not only know how to listen well and be slow to speak, as James tells us, and quick to listen, but also in the moments we may have the privilege to speak the gospel, we'll be able to connect to those areas where maybe they don't see Jesus, but he's still trying to intersect and bring healing in ways that only...
Where do we even start with how bad this actually is? With how much of a perversion of evangelism this actually is. Go over to Protestia to read the rest of this article, but the article goes on to read, I'll read a little bit of it. Acts 29 was founded as an evangelistic church planting network designed to exemplify a deep biblicism, mainly on the back of its Calvinistic soteriology. However, downgrade has crept in over the years, facilitated by a leadership that refuses to diligently and relentlessly cull cultural decay and ungodly influence within their midst, exemplified best after they cowardly kicked out 2 pastors from their network for an unspecified public critique. So Nate Schloman has talked about this on Twitter specifically, and then we put up a video where we basically replaced every time that was referred to as LGBTQ plus family and friends and this and that and the other, we replaced it with white supremacy, just so that you could see how derelict this is, how corrupt the thinking pattern is when it comes to reaching folks, because you would never say the same thing about somebody who is unrepentantly practicing white supremacy. So you can find that here over at Protestia's Twitter account. It says, wonder what the recent Acts 29 LGBTQ instructional video would look like if you subbed in other sins in place of homosexuality. Look no further and listen very carefully. Find that on Protestia's Twitter. Last headline for this intelligence briefing: church ordered to return 10 years of tithes worth $780,000 or lose their building. So this church here, Messiah Lutheran Church in Joliet, Illinois, I believe that's how they pronounce it, received the shock of their lives after government officials ordered them to repay nearly $800,000 in tithes given to them over the last 10 years, and the clock is ticking. So apparently what happened with this is somebody had donated $780,000 and around that to the church, and then found out that the SEC said that they got those funds illegitimately and now is coming after the church to get that money back, even though the church has already spent the money. So this is January of 2021. The SEC filed a federal lawsuit against the church demanding payment to the SEC of $780,165, full 10 years of donations that have been given. So the donations were given over 10 years by a local business that the SEC said came upon the money fraudulently by defrauding investors. The church accepted the donations in good faith, is not accused of wrongdoing. However, the donations are no longer available to meet the SEC's demand because they've been used in ministry over the last 10 years. Illinois law does not offer any protection despite no wrongdoing on the part of the church. It allows for the clawback of donations to charities based on accused misdeeds of the donor. There are no laws in Illinois to protect nonprofits. So basically, the church has got trouble here. Read more about this at protestia.com. Safe to say that the laws concerning this kind of thing where donations given to the church that then they spend on ministry can be pulled back are concerning and likely in need of legislative attention in Illinois and perhaps elsewhere. Thank you for tuning in for this edition of the Intelligence Briefing for Thursday, the 7th of September, 2023. Stay tuned to protestia.com for all of your latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. We'll see you again next time. As always, Semper Reformanda.